Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Airlift Tanker Association's virtual seminar series, Round 3. Today we are joined by Boeing's new Vice President of Air Force Systems, Lieutenant General Retired Sam Cox. The views expressed in this presentation are those of the speaker and do not reflect the official policy or position of the United States Air Force, the Department of Defense, or the United States government. Please take advantage of the question and answer feature in Teams to submit your questions anytime during the presentation. There is no need to wait until the end of the presentation portion to submit your questions. The earlier we get your question, the more likely we are to get to it in the time allotted. Now, I would like to introduce Lieutenant General Retired Rusty Findley, the Airlift Tanker Association Senior Vice President, to kick things off.
Good morning, everybody, and afternoon, I guess, for those folks in the central and eastern time zones. I'm out here in Phoenix in the 110-degree weather, but we're happy to have you join us today as we continue our online series, which is ATA's effort to, as we always do, promote professional development within our force. And we're very, very lucky today for the third in our series to welcome a tried and true mobility warrior, Lieutenant General Retired Sam Cox. Sam and I are dear friends from way back when, first met when he was a captain and I was a colonel out in Korea when he was the aide to General Hobson, the AFSOC commander, but then really got to work together at Charleston when this tanker guy, me, got beamed into one of only two C-17 wings there, and Sam was commanding the 14th Squadron, the Pelicans, and he taught me a lot about C-17 ops in those days, and still continued to teach me through the years when we interacted as when he was the TACC commander as well. Now, after retiring in 2017 from the 18th Air Force Command, he has just recently joined the Boeing team as the Vice President for Air Force Systems. Obviously, a very significant position in partnering with the mobility forces. Today he's going to spend a little time talking about his career and the things that he learned during his career, as well as a little bit about what's going on at Boeing. And we're just very, very fortunate and happy to have Sam join us today. Thank you, Sam, and over to you. Thanks again. And as you can see, he's got a little bit of association with the, I should say a lot of association with the Airlift Tanker Association. If you're looking on your screen, he is a three-time defending champ of the ATA CRUD tournament. So over to you, Sam. Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. First off, I appreciate you highlighted some of our relationship of the past, and I appreciated your leadership as a wing commander when you let the squadrons just run our own show, and you pushed us where we needed to go. And under your leadership, and I'll also add with Colonel Allardyce as the ops group commander, good team that let us spread our wings, and it was a great environment for us to be able to operate in and bring some pretty good capabilities on with the C-17 as we started the special operations program during that period of time as well. And then obviously when I was at TACC, there were some challenging times, and really appreciated everything you did along the way to help along with that. So, and then for Popeye or Alex Fapinski, thanks for your help and over the course of the last couple of days, just to try to get all this organized, and then also your leadership and helping move the ball forward. As General Finley talked about, the importance of continuing professional development is something that the ATA has always been about, and we need to continue that. I'll tell you, I'm not so sure about the winningest CRUD, but certainly proud of all the times we had an opportunity to play CRUD. It's a team event, clearly, and so I was one player on all those teams and played in lots of the tournaments, and it used to be a time we'd play until well into the early hours of the morning, but then we always immediately went to the appropriate seminars after. But particularly proud of having the opportunity to do back-to-back as the Dover wing commander and bring a team there. And in those days, most of the wings would bring a couple teams, and it was just a lot of fun. So with that, let me kind of get started. My official start at Boeing with the duty title and associated responsibilities was the 20th of March of this year. And so in that entirety of the time since then, we've been in some kind of a telework environment, restricted travel, a lot of that. So have had the opportunity to do quite a few. WebEx is what we typically do, but Zoom and that. And although kind of getting used to that, reality is I'd rather be in person with all of you and have a face-to-face so we can have a better dialogue, as opposed to what this ends up being is more of a one-way communication. But it is what it is, so we'll just move on from there. If I could, I want to piggyback just a little bit off of the previous two sessions. So General Miller and Chief Green led the first one and talked a little bit about AMC priorities, and then probably the most important part of that was the innovation that has allowed the command to go beyond the transportation isolation system to be able to move, whether it's patients or infected passengers, things like that, in this crazy environment, the COVID environment that we're in right now, to be able to continue moving the mission forward. And there was a little bit of a tie there, so would like to, from a Boeing, my current position, part of the things that we were trying to do at Boeing was assist with the airflow patterns in the KC-135, KC-10, C-17, KC-46, understand what would be the best platform to be able to move patients and passengers, and at the same time make sure that the air crew was safe. And so got a chance to participate a little bit in that tangentially, but then also for Boeing, the fact that we're able to contribute in different ways, whether it's 3D printing for the face shields, or for those of you that have been around Charleston very much, to get a chance to see the Dreamlifter. And as all of you in this business understand, most of the time you cube out before you gross out. In this case, that's a massive airplane, and we could move a lot of masks around and medical supplies. If you've seen that thing, the tail's actually on a hinge. So it was pretty cool for us to be able to help participate in that some way. And then, of course, just the continued operations that were necessary as part of the defense industrial base and critical aspects. So continue to produce weapons and aircraft, et cetera. So doing that. Then, so the next session was with General McNabb. And, General McNabb was one of my squadron commanders when I was a young captain. And at that time, so this is the 85 to 91 time frame for me in the 141. Most of that period was supporting the Cold War. We did a lot of training, a lot of work with the Army doing airdrops and things like that. And when Desert Shield, Desert Storm kicked in, it really changed how we did things. And General McNabb, then Lieutenant Colonel McNabb, was very influential in helping us understand the tactical implications of the sortie that we're flying and how it tied to the bigger strategic picture. And that stuck with me for a long time and was very helpful as we go. So the reason you have this slide up here, and it's just a simple thing, is do the mission and have fun. And as I said earlier, that was the coin that I had when I was a wing commander at Dover. And so I don't have a list of SAM-isms or anything, and I probably should, a list of things that you should, these are the leadership tenets or anything like that. I just have never done that. And mine's always just been that right there, just do the mission and have fun. Because I believe for me, it just kind of sums up what it is. And I will tell you that General McNabb certainly had that one when he was a squadron commander and carried it all the way through. So this isn't anything new, but for me, it was just do the mission and have fun. And so I just want to maybe tell a couple stories that you can draw something out of, and how it ties back for me anyways, in terms of the do the mission piece of it. So I'll go back, there was a book written some time ago that said that everything you need to learn to survive in life and do well in life, you learned in kindergarten. Well, I learned a lot of those things as a second lieutenant and as a captain that helped throughout my career with just an understanding. The first one of those I want to talk about is just an initial dollar ride, so that orientation flight, brand new to the 141, and going to go from McGuire over across the pond to Rhine Mine, and then a few other places over in throughout Europe. And through that entire 7-day trip, I never got in the seat. I stayed in the jump seat the whole time, was never allowed to get in the seat. And Lieutenant Colonel Jerry Ward, so Vietnam era 141 pilot, had lots of experience in the airplane. And, so as we're going through, he taught a lot about what it was that it was supposed to be doing, how to get around the world, a lot of things about the airplane itself. But one of the things that he insisted on was precision on the radios. Now, as all of you know, you got to sound cool on the radios. But I would have to practice making the radio call inside the airplane on the intercom multiple times, and then he would allow me to make the radio call out. And some people would say, well, that was really silly to make you have to do that. But reality was, what he was telling me was he had a level of expectation that was set and conveyed that to me very clearly. And then the other part was those little, if you do the little things right, those are the building blocks that everything else is formed off of. And so do the little things right and you can build off of that. And so that for me was an important lesson going through. And you could paraphrase it in a different way. And Admiral McCraven said it in a speech at a college graduation, I think it was University of Texas. And he also wrote a book. You know, he says, if you're going to change the world, make your bed first, right? So do the little things right, and then you can build off of that. If you can go to the next slide, please. So many of you have maybe heard my description of this story. And if you want to, anybody wants to talk about the name on the name tag, I can do that as well. But right now, I just want to talk about the dots on the name tag. And when I started in the 141, name tags were, you had crew ladders that were established between the ops officer and the squadron ops desk. And on that ladder, you had little slots that you could slide the name tags in. And so the name tags for pilots, and so this example, Doug Hetzel was a pilot, were blue. And each of the crew positions had a different color of a name tag. And so when you first got to the squadron as a basic crew member, whether you're a loadmaster, flight engineer, navigator, or a pilot, all you had on there was your name. And then, and I'll use the pilot example, when you became a first pilot, they would drill just enough paint off of the name tag that it would have that one dot on the upper left-hand corner. And on the other side of the name tag, it'd have the same thing. And then if you were good enough as a first pilot and upgraded aircraft commander, they'd drill another dot. And the same thing on the top right would be for air refueling co-pilot, air refueling aircraft commander, instructor pilot, flight examiner. Bottom left was for airdrop and all the quals there. And then special ops was on the bottom right-hand side. There were nine pilots, or in every crew position, there were 9 people in the entirety of the 141 crew force that had 16 dots on their name tag. And the only way you earned another dot was being really good at the first thing. So you had to be a really good airdrop co-pilot before they were going to select you to be an airdrop aircraft commander. And for me, that taught a very important lesson early on, was to make sure you're really good at the job that you're doing right now, so that they're going to want to select you to do another job. And it doesn't matter whether you're in corporate world or if you're in a different AFSC in the Air Force. You need to be really good at the dot that you're doing, the position you have, and then move on. And General Boyd, to a certain extent, said something similar, although it's not his direct quote, but bloom where you're planted. Do a good job at what you're doing. The thing that I always wanted to add to that last part of bloom where you're planted is that if you're happy with what you're doing, if you're enjoying what you're doing, and you're in a place that you like doing it, there seems to be a lot more fertilizer. So bloom where you're planted, enjoy what you're doing, and the fertilizer will be there. So the third story I just want to tell briefly was as a young captain, I had the opportunity to go to the MAC and then AMC as it transitioned over. Was in the ops side, the A3, and then over an A5 or the plan side of it. And at the time, that's when General Fogelman was coming into the command to be the commander for Air Mobility Command and the commander for U.S. Transportation Command when it was all combined. During that period of time, so this is 91 to 94, the C-141 was on the tail end of its career, and it had been extended from 30,000 hours of flying time to 45,000 through the service life extension program. But it started to really show its age, and so there was holes, weep hole cracks that were inside the wings itself. There were window post cracks, which led to pressurization issues and altitude restrictions and things like that. And at the same time, you had the 141 or C-17 that was coming into the AMC fleet. It was in the development, starting to get the airplanes rolling. And the buy had been cut from 210 all the way down to 40. And there was a significant challenge in front of us. How do you maintain strategic brigade airdrop? How do you maintain the strategic airlift capability and capacity that was required? And so I got to watch General Fogelman in action, and these are just my observations. He might draw something different than that. But in his decision calculation of understanding what the risk was, who was allowed to accept that risk, who needed to make the decision, and then delegating the decisions that didn't need to be made at the highest level. And I got to see what I thought was a master at that at a pretty young age, and kind of tried to apply that through the rest of my career. Understand who's allowed to accept risk, whether it's risk to mission, risk to force, understand what those things are. And then the other part that I learned vividly then was deal with the facts that you have, not the facts that you want to have. It's the reality of the situation. You can't hope for something different. Deal with what you have to have. So collectively, I'll just say those three things of do the little things right, do your job the best you can every time, understand where risk is, and deal with the facts and the reality of the situation. And at the same time, make sure that you have a positive attitude about what you're getting to do, what you're going to do. And all of that comes together with just simply do the mission and have fun. I think that's really important for us to do. So let me transition very quickly over to the corporate side and what I've observed here. So, this is the first job I've had that is in the corporate or industry. And so I've had a chance now just to sit back and observe a little bit from a Boeing perspective. And our new CEO it's been very public. Everybody knows what took place the latter part of last year and then into this year when Mr. Dave Calhoun became our new CEO. And I observed a lot of very similar characteristics of what I saw as a young captain on the AMC staff, MAX staff, of a leader that comes in, makes observations about what's going on, deals with the specific situation in hand, makes very clear decisions, clear communication about it, sets the objectives that for the company and the people inside the company, and is very public about it. And then when things change, so when COVID happened and rapidly change in the airline passenger industry, and if you think back to just the latter part of April, passenger movement across the enterprise was down 95% from the previous year's levels. So significant impact, but it's been candid communication that has led to where we are today, and I think there's a positive and a bright future. And then, as General McNabb talked about last week, one of the things was with the tragedy that occurred in Minneapolis with Mr. George Floyd and the death and all of that surrounding that, and the subject of race, racism, diversity, bias, all of those have come to the forefront. And I've seen once again a leader that steps up and is having those difficult conversations, taking it head on. So I'm proud to be a part and affiliated with this company, just like I was proud to be a part of the United States Air Force and that. So if I could shift just a little bit, and I hope I'm not going too long with this, Alex, but want to talk a little bit about diversity, inclusion, racism, bias, all those things that I think are important for us to make sure that we have the proper discussions as we go. And I want to tell a story that leads to what a change and how I thought about it. I grew up in the Air Force. My dad was, my mom and dad both were born and raised in a small town in South Carolina. My dad quit high school when he was 16 years old, turned 17 on the way to basic training, and joined the Air Force as a 17-year-old in 1956. I was born in an Air Force hospital. I lived on Air Force bases. I went to the elementary school that was on the base, played on all the sports teams and other activities with kids just like me. I didn't see race as an issue as I grew up. Now, when I went home and back to South Carolina, that was a slightly different environment. And I could see the discrimination. I could see racial tension. There was bias. There was all kinds of things. The use of the N-word was prevalent. I saw it there, but when I would come back to inside the fence of an Air Force base, I didn't see it. So I didn't think it existed. And then when I went to the Air Force Academy, we all got along just fine. I didn't see it. There wasn't an issue. And so when I got into that 41st Airlift Squadron and flying, and then one day, then Captain, retired Colonel Frank Benjamin, who's a good friend, I saw him put a flyer up, and he happens to be African American, put a flyer up, and it was SOBO, the Society of Black Officers. And I just couldn't understand why that was something that needed to be done. We didn't have a Society of White Officers. Why was that necessary? I didn't say anything, I thought, well, okay, you can do that, but I don't understand why. And then fast forward a little bit, and I'm at, so CQ Brown was then Captain Brown was the aide to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Fogelman. I was the aide, as General Finley said, I was the aide to the AFSOC commander. So we ran in the same circles for 2 years running, and then we ended up in the same seminar at ACSC. And because we were seated alphabetically, we sat side by side. And we're friends. Our wives are friends. Our kids are friends. So one day we're sitting in and we're listening to an MEO EEO briefing. And it's the same briefing that I've heard for the previous 10 years. And again, I believe that I treat people fairly, all that, right? So CQ and I are walking from the club, from the ACSC to go have lunch. And it's just the two of us. And I'm lamenting about the event and the MEO EEO briefing and that, hey, I treat people fairly, I get it, blah, blah, blah. And he stopped me in my tracks when he said, I'm not sure you do. Again, we're friends. And he said, when you go into your squadron and you're the only person that looks like you, and you go to the club on Friday night, you're the only person that looks like you, and he gave several other examples. He said, then you might understand. And I thought about that for quite a bit and reflected on it. And what I'm going to say, I'm not trying to compare life as a professional versus what I'm going to talk about as a game. But in high school, I was the only white kid on my basketball team. And I would go to gyms where I would be the only white kid in the entire gym. And sometimes the heckling would start. And unfortunately, I didn't have enough game to shut down the heckling. But whatever game I did have, whatever potential I had, I don't think I could have gotten there because I wasn't comfortable. For me, that's just a game. And if I didn't perform well in a game, so be it. But in a professional environment, sometimes being the only is challenging. And so for me, on that day, the light bulb turned on and that I needed to look at diversity, race, inclusion through a completely different lens. And so the light bulb turned on and I needed to do things differently. You know, we all have bias. We all, whether it's conscious or unconscious bias. And bias isn't always bad. Sometimes you need to, the algorithm already has to be run. So if something, a rabid dog shows up, you already know that there's a decision. You don't have to even think about it. You're going to go. You're going to react with bias. But we need to understand what that bias is. So it can't just all be unconscious bias. And we have to deal with it because we all have them. And so today, in a real life example, for if you're walking down the street and you see somebody that's not wearing a mask, what bias do you have towards that? Do you think that are you going to make a character assessment that maybe they don't care about other people? They don't care about your loved ones? That they might get sick? Or do they simply have the mask in their back pocket and they know that they're not going to come within 10 feet? Did you have bias in your assessment of that individual or not? And anyway, I think we need to take that across the board. We all have bias. We have to understand what it is. We have to deal with what's going on right now. Have those challenging, hard conversations. Okay, Alex, I'll stop there and turn it over for some Q&A.
All righty, sir. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead here to the questions. So we have one here from Chief Master Sergeant Jay France. Good afternoon from U.S. Transcom, sir. Great to see you again. Understanding your time in the seat at Boeing and the current virtual operating environment with regard to culture, What similarities and differences have you noticed between the culture of our Air Force and the culture of the Boeing team? And do you have any recommendations on improving our Air Force joint relationship with industry? Thanks.
That's Chief, thanks. And I appreciate what you're doing out there at the US Transcom. Known you and your leadership style for quite some time, so appreciate that. Clearly there is differences between military organization and then what we have in the corporate world. You know, I'll start with, there's a fundamental difference in the hierarchy, right? So if you walk into the room as a command chief or senior enlisted leader, or you know, you've got the stripes on your sleeve and you walk in and you immediately have some level of credibility because there's an understanding of all the things that you've done to get to where you're wearing those stripes on your sleeves and all the different insignia associated with that. That's one difference, right? So I would say in the environment I'm in now, part of it is not just, there's no immediate recognition of, hey, there's no visual that says you're in this position for this reason. You've gone through all these hoops and everything to get to that point. So there's a little bit of a difference there. There's probably a little bit of a difference as well, as there might be a little more informality in the corporate or civilian world versus what it is. So it's not necessarily rank and last name. It may be a first name all the time. And so there is a difference associated with that. As far as relationships, one of the things that I think is, I learned a lot at Transcom of the importance of having a close working relationship with the commercial partners. You know, so whether it's the craft or visa partners, there were so many things that we as military members, we could not accomplish, but through the relationships of our craft and visa partners, you could accomplish things that they had connections that we didn't have. And so I think there's sometimes there's maybe an adversarial relationship that maybe we don't need to have, and where we can improve on that, I think we should. So I guess that's what I'd say, Chief. Thank you for the question.
All right, sir. The next question that we have is, what leadership lessons did you learn while serving as the A1? It was one of the most challenging times I witnessed while serving, and I felt proud to know you were working through it.
Okay, so what I talked about with deal with the facts that you have, not the facts you want to have, was probably the most significant thing there. You know, at the time when I walked in the door, we had a force size on the active duty force of 332,000, and we're going to draw down to 308,000. That was a challenging time, but you know, it was the balance of modernization, manpower, and readiness was you had to have all those. And I used to show a video, and it was Ma and Pa kettle math, and it was doing goofy math to get to the wrong equation, right? And we couldn't use Ma and Pa kettle math. We had to use real math. So dealing with the reality of the situation, there's a lot of things that I think we could have probably done better throughout that, but we tried to make sure that we understand and gave everybody an opportunity to consider voluntary separation, to think through it, tried to provide visibility for all of the AFSCs by your group and everything to understand how many people we had to reduce in that particular thing. But probably the most important lesson learned for me was the importance that you can't cut your seed corn. So there was a time years back where we just simply cut a session significantly, and that's a big mistake. You can't cut the sessions, otherwise you have hollow year groups going through. Teamwork was one that we clearly had to have across the MAJCOMs and internal to the staff, so the importance of that was there. And then the other part that, and I don't think we figured this out just yet, but in today's environment, the expectation is you ask a question, push the button, and you're going to get an answer. And our system didn't operate that way. We had to get all the questions in. If you decided you wanted to separate or not, you had to get all of those in and then make some decisions based on that. So the expectation of immediate feedback was a challenge for us. And then the other part would be how to deal with social media. that was a significant challenge for us because it seemed like every time there was a mistake, because clearly we made mistakes, but in every case, we would err on the side of the airman. If we made a mistake, okay, let's figure out how to fix that and move forward. But it got magnified significantly, every mistake that was made because of the social media. And that's just the reality of what we have to deal with in today's environment. So some of those are probably observations. Certainly would love to get answers on how to deal with some of those. All right.
All right, sir. The next one for you is one of the things that many of us admired most about your leadership approach was not only how you took care of airmen, but also how you systemically engaged with mission partners and commanders you're supporting. Can you share a success story or a vignette where that partner engagement led to success?
Okay, yeah. So probably towards the end of our time, so there was the Army wanted to have, or 18th Airborne Corps wanted to have 10,000 parachutes a month. And so that became, kind of, okay, here's the measurement. And it took a lot of interaction. So there's a Army Airborne Board that exists. So it's chartered by the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army. And so with partnership, I got invited to be a part of that and would sit at the head of the table along with General Thompson, who is the 18th Airborne Corps commander, and then Major General Paul LaCamera, excuse me. And so to have that dialogue helped take what was a really challenging conversation that was getting far more press at the Chief of Staff of the Army and Chief of Staff of the Air Force level than it warranted. But that's just, and it was getting congressional interest. But by building those relationships and engaging directly with the senior leadership of the 18th Airborne Corps, 82nd Airborne, we were able to diffuse that. And the work of the staff, both at 18th Air Force A3 and AMC A3, to be able to get to the grassroots level and solve problems, kind of made that all go away. We were able to do a lot of positive things working with the Army to satisfy their requirements, and at the same time we could get good training out of ourselves. And then another example would be working with the CFAC to understand, as we were, I won't use the names because I'm not sure if it's classified or not, but getting to support some operations in the CENTCOM AOR that required us to go into a unprepared field, working very closely with the CFAC to be able to do that, and then helping engage the people down in the structure as well to interact. Anyway, I always felt like it was important for us to do that. That's all.
All righty, sir. Next one is, did you spend time in Air Force Special Operations? And if so, what was your job?
So as I said earlier in my story associated with General Brown, I was the aide to the AFSOC commander for 2 years from 94 to 96. Before that, I did the C-141 Special Ops program. So did that for 6 years at Charleston, back when we had 9 air crews there that were associated with that program. So my entire time there was spent with when I was at Hurlburt was with General Hobson.
Outstanding, sir. All right, the next one is, can you give us an update on VC-25B?
Sure. So obviously that one is the highest possible visibility. Clearly that goes all the way into the White House and lots of communication. We had the Secretary of the Air Force out a week and a half ago, actually 2 weeks ago, to see the VC-25. We understand the importance of the program. That's national level decision making that takes place. And big picture, the program is on track. It's one of the highest priorities for the company to make sure that it does stay on track, not just because it's going to have high bids, but because we understand as a company, understand the importance of the work that's going on there. So big picture, we're on track to deliver on the timeline as promised.
All right, the next one's somewhat related, and there's two related questions. So with the latest delivery of KC-46 again having issues, can you talk to what Boeing is due to fix the issues? And then we also had a question on getting an update on the Cat 1 deficiencies on KC-46. So I figured I'd just roll those together for you.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the Cat 1 DRs. So big picture, all of the Cat 1 DRs we're on track to close all the issues. The one that is certainly has been alive most recently is the fuel leaks. And a little bit of an understanding of what the fuel system is, right? So some, I would say, envision that there's fuel that's leaking directly into the airplane or things like that. That's not what it is. So there's two containment barriers for the fuel system. There's an interior barrier that is supposed to capture all of the fuel, and then if it does escape out of that first barrier, then there's a second barrier to capture it. And so there's 17 airplanes that have been identified that fuel has escaped into that second barrier. And so we've gone back to do the fixes. So 13 of those are complete already. We started a second line at San Antonio, so it's a rapid repair facility to be able to do that. It takes about 10 days to do that work. And then the lessons learned through all of that, we've also incorporated that into the assembly process itself. So big picture, we're on track. That should all be resolved very shortly. And then the boom redesign, that's more of on the Air Force side of it. We're clearly doing contacts every single day, but the Air Force, I'd let them answer that, but no issues associated with that. And probably the bigger one that has long-term implications, and folks have been talking about it for quite some time, is the remote vision system. So I will say that earlier this year in April, we signed a MOA between Boeing and the Air Force to make some steps in a different direction, right? So there's a couple phases associated with that. We're the initial phase is upgrading the existing cameras to improve the video imagery, have new sensors that will help have a distance measurement between the tip of the boom and the airplane. So LiDAR, for depth cues associated with that. So in fact, we're starting the development test demo next week on that to see the difference between what we have with the RVS 1.0, the current baseline version, and this enhanced version in the initial phase. But the longer term view is the second phase of what we're doing, and that is new cameras, high definition, HDR, enhanced processing, larger displays, a more holistic, complete upgrade of the system. So big picture, again, we are on track to resolve all these issues. But if I could step back just a little bit from a broader perspective, the company is committed to the fixes. We're getting better every day with the weapon system itself. We've delivered 34 airplanes so far to 4 bases. So, Altus, McConnell, Pease, and Seymour Johnson. So the first airplane was delivered to Seymour Johnson not too long ago. So, and the airplane's flying every day, making contacts every day. Altus is doing training every single day. There's, as a tanker, over 14,000 contacts, over 18 million pounds of fuel, certifications with multiple airplanes. It's not exactly where it needs to be. And as I said, the Boeing company has committed to continue making it better. And so this enhanced RVS and then RVS 2.0, which is the longer term view, is the potential it will make it significantly better. And then on top of that, as you go further forward into the future, the integration of the KC-46 into the larger fight, it being a node, not just tanker, airlift, AE, but a node in the overall C2 structure. I think that's important. So big picture, we're on track with all of that. The one issue that with FOD, the last issue with FOD was simple, that Boeing employees identified the FOD. It is a result of the enhanced inspections that we're doing, new processes, procedures, personnel training, all of that to make sure that when Boeing is finished with the product and giving it to the United States Air Force, that it's a FOD-free and high-quality product. That's all.
All right, sir. Thank you for that insight. We have one somewhat related. I hear that Boeing has a great potential replacement for the C-17 MFDs, which could let the C-17 use the large displays which are common in the KC-46. What is the status of that opportunity, and when will ASICs come to the cockpit to provide C-17 crews with situational awareness?
Yeah, so much bigger answer probably than just the displays, right? So, if I said earlier, I started with the C-17 back when I was on the AMC staff, and then, that was in 1993, and then started flying the airplane in 97. So Boeing has a long-term relationship with the Air Force. As you look into the future, the C-17 is going to be around for decades, right? And also with their FMS partners. So multiple nations are flying the airplane as well. So we work closely with Air Mobility Command and AFMC on a daily basis to try to address the diminishing supply, sources of supply, obsolescence, all those things. So it's an integrated approach with lots of initiatives, whether it's with the international folks dealing with small fleet dynamics. It's the depot that we're doing out in San Antonio in the interface with Robbins. It's training for both for maintenance training and for aircrew training. The MFT, the HUD, all those new capabilities that exist. And the challenge, quite frankly, is how do you balance the resources as Air Mobility Command to go after all those things against not just the C-17 fleet, but all of the fleets. And so we're providing options, providing solutions. And now it's just a matter of how do we make that work for the Air Force to be able to sustain the C-17 for the long term, well into, some estimates of into the 2070 for the airplane. So a more holistic response to that. The fleet's nearing nearly 4 million flying hours. It's been a workhorse for the command. Okay.
Alrighty, sir. The next one's a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but I'm going to just throw it out there for you with the understanding that you are new in the job. But the question is, thank you for your time today. What is Boeing's latest production plan, if you know about it, for the F-15?
Okay, so clearly the line is still there. We're working closely with the Air Force on that, as well as with other nations. The F-15EX is an important, it's a massive airplane, huge truck for carrying munitions, integral to both playing with stealth and non-stealth aircraft as well. So important for us to continue that. We're producing airplanes routinely out of St. Louis and continue to do modifications. Very positive environment with the Air Force on that particular one. There's some programmatic aspects that I probably just should not talk about at this point in this forum, but very positive. We're moving forward with F-15EX.
All right, so the next one's not a question, but a statement from Dave Merrill. He just wants you to know he's still abiding by the Ma and Pa Kettle math, and he wants to thank you for teaching him.
Yeah, so Dave Merrill was a lieutenant colonel on the AMC staff, working the analysis shop when the C-17 was going through all the challenges and the buy had been reduced to 40. And I learned a lot from Dave Merrill in how to look at things and the databases that he was using, and it was amazing to me what they could do in that small little shop. But Dave was instrumental in keeping the C-17 alive, and we're better off because he was in that seat.
All right, sir, the next question, you and I were just discussing this yesterday about flying the T-38, but can you talk to us a little bit about what's going on with the T-7 program?
Yeah, so I started flying the T-38 in 1985. So the T-38 came into the inventory, if I remember right, in 1961, the year I was born. So 58 years ago. So I was flying it in 1985. I got a chance to fly it in 2019. The airplane hasn't changed a lot, but it's been, obviously there's some upgrades with the avionics and what have you, but it hasn't changed a whole lot in terms of what it can do. But it's been a great workhorse for the Air Force, and I think the T-7 Red Hawk is going to be equally good. And as you look at what the T7 has the capability of doing, getting to that 4th gen and 5th gen training aspect. And, I'm interested and can't wait to see, for some of you probably saw the article from General Holmes that talking about how to reduce the training time that it takes, so the pipeline to go from starting UPT to your qualified fighter pilot, that you can go out and fly on your own, is a pretty long pipeline. How can we shorten that? And where does the T7 play in that? So I'm interested in how that goes. So some significant milestones have gone on. So in February was the first time that we shut an engine down in flight and restarted with the T7. That's an important part. Over 200 flights and the test program so far. The advancements in digital engineering and manufacturing precision associated with that is significant with the airplane. We're working very closely with the Air Force on the test aspect of it, and so very positive across the board. I think it's going to be a great airplane for the Air Force and maybe others.
All right, sir. The next question is going to circle back on some of your remarks about General Brown, but they're asking, when you worked with General Brown, why are you looking forward to partnering with him, and what are the strengths that he brings to the Air Force and to the partnership with Boeing?
Okay, so as I said before, I've known General Brown since we were captains. I've always respected him. He's always been, on top of his game in every arena that I've been around. And again, I've got to work with him quite a bit over the years in different places. I trust his judgment. I look forward to working with him on lots of issues. Clearly the Boeing portfolio. Air Force is a huge customer. We want to make sure that we're providing the best possible product to the Air Force on that. So I look forward to working with him on that. I look forward to working with him on any of the diversity issues that he wants to pursue. If you think about, and don't want to make too much of it, he's in the position as the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force because he's one of the best leaders I've ever been around. But it also happens to be that he's an African American, and it's the first service chief to be an African American. And then if you look at his selection to be the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, another remarkable leader and someone that so the first service to have a female as the chief of a chief and senior listed person for the service. So significant across the board. I just value General Brown's leadership, his candor. I think a lot of the things that a lot of the same mannerisms that existed with General Fogelman, I see those in CQ Brown. So I think the Air Force is in great hands across the board, and it's going to be awesome for us to partner with him in any way we can.
All right, sir, just time for a couple more here. We have one from David Lang. It says, given the increasing threat environment, A2AD, GPS degradation, cyber attacks, are you confident that DoD and Boeing are in sync regarding future requirements, and can industry provide cost-effective solutions given the complexity of the threat environment?
Okay, it figures that Dave Lang would send me the hardest question possible. Dave was out at the Air Force Academy as a Group AOC when I was the Commandant of Cadets. Dave's a big thinker and all that. So clearly there's our challenges with all of the items that you've identified in that question, Dave. And with partnership with the Department of Defense and the Air Force, we have to get better at that so that we are at a point that we understand the complications associated with it and can do it. The near peer adversary that exists today is not going to go away, and we need to make sure that we're, as Boeing, that we're helping provide solutions to all of those issues. So yes, I think the partnership is going to allow us to get to that point, but we still have work to do.
All right, sir. Next one's a little bit more out of a lighter note. It's from Kim Huth. It says, General McNabb is the ATA chairman. He says that you must make time to have fun while also getting work done. How do you do that? Also, if you were in charge today with the media platforms we've embraced, how would you make sure in-person training or conferences remain viable?
Hi, Kim. I know her well as also, so we've traveled together at different times, and I know the relationship she has with General McNabb. I agree with you. You do have to figure out how to have fun, but sometimes that's more of a challenge than others. So I would say that. So as a squadron commander, part of fun, I mean, it's not having a party every day. It's having a positive attitude about what you get an opportunity to do. And so as a squadron commander, I would bring my kids to the squadron. They had the biggest screen TV. They could watch cartoons or whatever they wanted on. But having the kids in the squadron allowed them to understand what Dad was doing and interact with the people that were in the squadron. And I thought it was important to do that. Some of these folks were young airmen and young lieutenants that didn't have families, but they might have little brothers and little sisters, and they could align with that. And it was good to have them in there. So that the fun part of it is, I think, sometimes you just need to define that. It's not having a party. It's there's time for that as well, but you do have to make time to have fun. So for example, I'll just give one. So at 18th Air Force, when we had the commanders conference, I blocked out time that we would play 9 holes of golf or play cornhole, all get together, maybe have a cold beverage, but we were all gathered together in an informal environment. And I still think that's very important for the Air Force and for any company you're with, is you do have to make that time. And sometimes there is an unwillingness to do that because you feel like you're going to be scrutinized because you're not work. It's important for us to take time, and it goes back a little bit old. Maybe if that's considered risk, I'd be willing to take that. But you got to make time to have fun. The social platforms and media, that's a challenge. I am probably not the best one to answer that because I still believe in the old school eyeball to eyeball communication, but we do need to do a better job of how to interact with in the media platforms that we have. So Kim, I'm sorry I don't have the best answer on that one.
Alrighty, sir, we have one comment and then one last question. So Mike Reynolds says, just an observation, great job today, and as always, appreciate all you've done and continue to do for our great Air Force. The last question is, can you share a story about an airman that influenced you?
Okay, those two tie right together. Chief, tell Ann I said hello. So Chief Reynolds was the command chief at AFSOC when I was there. And so talking about a single airman would be a disservice to all the folks that I had an opportunity to serve with, that they were my bosses or that were peers or worked for me. There's way too many of those for me to count. But if I had to identify one or two or three, so certainly my dad was an airman that had a significant influence on my life, and everything associated with my son, who's, I won't say where he's at, but currently deployed, who's a senior airman in the United States Air Force, doing great things. But if I had to pick one person that I worked for that had the biggest influence on me, it'd be General Hobson. I was the aide for 2 years for General Hobson, and he taught me what it meant to be a quiet professional. Just go do your job. There doesn't need to be a lot of fanfare about it. Do your job as a professional airman. Be a quiet professional. And then also, we had so much fun together. It was a blast, whether it was out on the golf course, and I had an opportunity to spend, I probably spent more time with him than I did with my own wife for those 2 years. But I learned so many valuable lessons every time we went on a trip about how he dealt with people, how he understood that people wanted to hear what the general had to say, that he needed to be approachable. I learned so much from General Hobson, and I value the friendship that we still have today. There's lots of airmen that had influence on me, but that's probably General Hobson would be the biggest.
Well, General, thank you so much for that. And I know there's a lot of airmen out there that'll be telling similar stories about the influence that you've had on them over their career. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to send it back to General Finley for some closing remarks. So General Finley, turning it over to you.
Hey, Sam, fabulous job. Thank you. Thank you so very much. As always, your thoughts and your insight were so instructive and so uplifting, frankly. In particular, your message of inclusiveness and bias is something that certainly transcends this mobility world that we live in, and is so very applicable to the entire world that we live in today. So thank you for that. We wish you the very best. Say hi to Tammy and Claire and Pat, and thanks again for being here for ATA. And I do want to announce to the audience out there that our next session will be on July 10th, and Lieutenant General Select Smokey Robinson, the Director of Ops for Transcom, will be our featured guest at that one. So all of you folks out there that enjoy this, please tune in for that. Also, please take a look at go to our website on ATA and see what's going on with ATA. We're still moving out best we can under this COVID environment. So if you're not a member, we'd encourage you to consider joining. Please do. Sam, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
If I could say one more thing before we drop off.
Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
So leaders don't need to be experts on race or bias or anything, but they need to talk to each other. They need to make sure that there's an environment where people are comfortable to talk. They feel safe enough to have the tough conversations. We can't stick our heads in the sand and deal with the facts that we want. We have to deal with the facts that we have. This is a really, really important subject that we need to move forward on. And let me also echo what General Finley just said about General Robinson. General Robinson is way beyond just a tactical leader. He's a strategic leader. He's had all the right positions in the C-17, and then with his job now at Transcom as the J3. What a great person to step into the deputy commander at the Air Mobility Command. I look forward to hearing what he has to say as well. Known him a long time.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Thanks again, gentlemen. The views expressed in this presentation are those of the speaker and do not reflect the official policy or position of the United States Air Force, the Department of Defense, or the United States government. Please send comments and suggestions for future topics and guests to us at admin@airlifttanker.onmicrosoft.com. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you continue to tune in. And if you've missed any of the sessions, please check out our YouTube page or atalink.org to see the archived one, as well as some of the old videos from previous conventions. Have a great weekend.